On my 30th birthday, Marcos asked me to meet him at the Civil Affairs Bureau. He specifically told me to put on my wedding dress and bring my identification documents, saying that he would give me a big birthday gift. But when I showed up at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, he smiled at his cronies behind him. See? She really came wearing a wedding dress and with her ID card. A bet's a bet. Everyone owes me 100. Then he turned around and raised an eyebrow at me. Grace, I was just joking. You didn't take it seriously, did you? Seeing that I remained silent, he said with a grin, if you're really that desperate to get married, you can just go inside and grab any guy to get the marriage certificate with. The people beside him were chattering and laughing. They laughed at me, saying that I was Marcos's most loyal lapdog and backup, that I would rather stay single all my life than marry anyone else. But when I walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau with my newlywed husband, holding our brand new marriage certificate, Marcos, who was standing in front of me, froze on the spot and his face turned pale. It was only when I saw with my own eyes that Marcos was collecting money from his friends one by one that I realized that everything today was yet another bet to make a fool of me. Those who had lost the bet rolled their eyes at me after making fun of me. Grace, do you know how much money I've lost because of you? For God's sake, use your brain. I've told you 1,000 times that Marcos is out of your league. You don't really think Marcos would marry you, do you? I bet you've been tricked at least 8 or 10 times. And you still fall for it. You're really hopelessly stupid. I bit my lower lip hard, and my fingernails almost dug into my flesh. After collecting the money, Marcos turned around and walked over to me in a few strides, speaking in a tone that seemed to show concern. What's the matter, Grace? Are you unhappy? He then turned to those friends and said, Hey, you bastards. Today is Grace's birthday. How could you bully the birthday girl? Just when I thought he had a sudden pang of conscience, Marcos took out a banknote from his pocket and handed it to me. With a smile, he said, Thanks to Grace, I've made 2,000. Here's 10 for you to buy a small cake. Consider it my birthday gift to you. After he said that, everyone burst out laughing again. Marcos, you're so kind. Be careful that Grace falls head over heels in love with you. Didn't you see that she came wearing a wedding dress? She's like a toad dreaming of eating swan meat, always thinking of marrying Marcos. In the past, at this time, I would have broken down in tears, begging Marcos to take pity on me and stop hurting me. But this time, I took the $10 from Marcos. Thanks. Coincidentally, it costs $9 to get the marriage certificate. I didn't bring any cash, so consider this your contribution. Marcos was stunned for a moment and then he burst out laughing. Grace, did you leave your brain at home? You're still thinking of marrying me. Can't you tell? I was just playing with you. I've seen mean people before, but I've never seen anyone as mean as you. He frowned and shook his head in disgust, as if I were something disgusting and filthy. Even though I had been somewhat prepared, his words still stabbed my heart like sharp arrows, leaving it riddled with holes. I found out about Marcos using me as a bet yesterday. Last night, I first received a call from him. On the phone, he was unusually gentle. Grace, meet me at the Civil Affairs Bureau at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. I want to give you a big birthday gift. Oh, by the way, remember to dress up nicely, put on the new wedding dress you just bought, and bring your household register and ID card. I'll be waiting for you. After hanging up the phone, my heart was pounding wildly. I had just posted a moments about trying on and buying a wedding dress. Could it be that he decided to marry me because of that moments? But not long after that, someone sent me a video. In the video, Marcos showed my moments about buying the wedding dress to the people around him. What does Grace mean by this? Someone beside him immediately replied, she's desperate to get married. That old woman who's almost 30 can't wait and can only vent her feelings in this way. I think Grace is jealous that Marcos has a new girlfriend and deliberately posted this moments to seek attention. Marcos's new girlfriend was named Scarlett. She was a young lady from a scholarly family, and Marcos cherished her like the apple of his eye. Marcos shook his head and said, it's such a hassle to be pestered by a woman like this. Well, I'll make a bet with you guys. With just one phone call, she'll obediently come to the Civil Affairs Bureau wearing this wedding dress tomorrow. Do you want to see the clown in a wedding dress? Someone laughed and said, Marcos, what if you lose? If you lose the bet, ask Sister Scarlett to dance for us. Before that person could finish laughing, Marcos punched him in the face. His face was terribly dark. If you want to die, just say so. Are you even worthy of calling Scarlett's name? Scarlett was his life, and no jokes were allowed about her. And I was the clown he used for the bet, and it didn't matter how he humiliated me. After watching the video, my heart ached with pain. Tears fell uncontrollably, dripping onto the phone screen and blurring his smug laughing face in the video. I wiped away my tears on the screen, and stared fixedly at Marcos's face. This was the childhood friend I had loved for 8 years. He knew better than anyone else how much I liked him, so he knew best how to hurt me the most. He had already forgotten the promises he made to me when we were young. Grace, if you're still unmarried at 30, we'll be together. Today I'm 30, and I'm getting married too. But I didn't tell Marcos that the person I was marrying wasn't him. The wedding dress I chose was ankle length. It was the one that my fiancé and I picked out together. I lifted the skirt and walked around Marcos towards the inside of the Civil Affairs Bureau. He grabbed my wrist. Stop pretending, Grace. Who are you acting for? If you're really that desperate to get married, you can just go inside and grab any guy to get the marriage certificate. That would also do me a favor. And don't come to harass me anymore in the future. Looking at his face, I didn't even have the energy to explain or get angry. I just felt disappointed and sad. The Marcos who used to chase someone for 800 meters just to make them apologize to me because they said something bad about me had completely disappeared. I shook my head and tried to pull my hand back, but suddenly Scarlett appeared. She shouted, Zian. Marcos subconsciously withdrew his hand. To show his loyalty, he even took out an alcohol wipe from his bag and carefully wiped the hand that had grabbed me, as if I were something particularly dirty. Scarlett asked, Zian, why are you here? Grace, are you getting married today? You're even wearing a wedding dress. Marcos looked around nervously. He didn't even dare to say that he had organized a bet because of me. In a panic, he randomly pulled one of his cronies and pushed him beside me, then laughed and said, Scarlett, you're so smart. You guessed it right. Today is Grace and Daxiong's wedding day. We're all here to support them and send our blessings. After he said that, those cronies chimed in one after another. Yes, yes, Sister Scarlett. Today is a good day for Grace and Daxiong. We're here to celebrate for them. Looking at Daxiong beside me, who was shorter than me and had a silly smile on his face, I just felt sick. Marcos, seeing that Scarlett was still a bit suspicious, pushed me and Daxiong forward. Quick, quick, go get the marriage certificate. Scarlett is watching. I staggered a couple of steps because of his push. Daxiong, beside me, was bold enough to directly hold my hand. He whispered to me, Grace, Marcos will never want you. I think you're not bad looking and have a nice figure. It's not impossible for us to make do with each other. I couldn't hold it in anymore and threw that greasy hand away, then leaned against the wall and retched. Marcos immediately said, Oh, Grace, don't tell me you're pregnant? So you two are getting married because of that. Daxiong, good for you. Scarlett also looked happy and congratulated me. Grace, I used to be really worried about your relationship situation. I didn't expect you to have a husband and a child so soon. Congratulations. And I just coldly looked at Marcos, who was still laughing exaggeratedly. I said calmly, Yes. I am getting married, but not to any of you scumbags. I'm going inside to get a number while I'm still unmarried. Save your congratulations for later. Marcos's smile froze on his face. At that moment, my phone rang. After answering the call, I hummed a few times. On the second floor, I'll go in and queue up first? Okay, that's fine. I turned around and said to Marcos, who was frozen in place, I'm wearing the wedding dress because my fiancé has hired a photographer to record what we look like on the day we get the marriage certificate. This light gauze dress is the lightest one among my 7 wedding dresses. It's suitable for wearing outside. Since you're all here, I'll give you the wedding invitations directly. My wedding is on the 10th of next month. You're welcome to attend. I took out the red wedding invitations from my bag and handed them out one by one. When it was Marcos's turn, he didn't take it. Those who got the wedding invitations whispered to each other, "The Wanley Hotel? That's the best hotel in the whole city. Did Grace marry into a wealthy second-generation family? She's so rich." Marcos twitched the corner of his mouth and his eyes were full of contempt. "Grace, I said you love to act, and you really went all out with this act, huh? Even a wedding invitation and holding the banquet at the Wanley Hotel. Such petty tricks just seem ridiculous in my eyes." As he spoke, he picked up the invitation with 2 fingers and threw it aside directly. Scarlett took a look at the invitation and sighed, saying, "I'm sorry, Grace. This time I'm also on Marcos's side. There aren't even photos of the bride and groom on this invitation. It doesn't look real." "There were no photos because we hadn't had time to take them yet." Scarlett continued to hold my hand and earnestly advised me, "Actually, I've always known how you feel about Marcos." Marcos immediately tensed up. "Scarlett, let me explain." Scarlett shook her head. "Marcos, you don't need to explain anything. I know you two are childhood sweethearts and grew up together, so your relationship is naturally special." She then looked at me. "Grace, as a woman, I can really understand your feelings. But you can't force feelings. Marcos has said that he only regards you as a sister. And I, now, can be considered half of your elder sister. Listen to my advice. Don't do stupid things anymore. The more you do, the more others will laugh at you." The people behind her all chimed in. Sister Scarlett is really reasonable. Sister-in-law is truly a lady from a noble family. She's kind-hearted and so nice. She can even persuade Grace like this. She's really a rare good woman in the world." Scarlett looked at me with a pitying and condescending gaze. "All right, Grace. Let me take you to change out of this wedding dress." It was the same old story again. Every time Marcos played tricks on me and humiliated me, Scarlett would always jump out and play the good guy. As time passed, Marcos became even more convinced that his girlfriend was beautiful and kind-hearted, while I used my own so-called ugliness and baseness to set off her goodness. I was about to refuse when Scarlett suddenly saw the clothing label on my back. She grabbed the label and stared at it as she read aloud, "A wedding dress from Bolage, and it's the latest style of this season. Grace, I really feel sorry for you. You rented this wedding dress, right? The label hasn't even been torn off yet. Actually, you really didn't have to do this." Hearing this, the expression on Marcos's face became even more mocking. He pulled Scarlett into his arms, kissed her hair, and said in a doting tone, "Scarlett, you're just too kind. What's there to say to a shameless bitch like Grace?" Scarlett was still pretending. She clutched Marcos's clothes tightly and said seriously, "Marcos, I believe Grace definitely didn't do it on purpose. It's just a little girl's vanity. She'll be okay if it's corrected in time." My face flushed red, and I clenched my fists to explain, "My fiancé Ma bought this dress for me yesterday. I forgot to tear off the label, so that's why." "Come on. If you tell too many lies, they'll seem like the truth." Marcos casually lifted his chin at me. "Grace, if you really have the people behind him," immediately echoed, "Yeah, let's see what he's got. Whether he's a mule or a horse, bring him out for a walk. Since he can afford famous brand clothes and book the Wanley Hotel, let us get to know this rich guy too. Aren't you getting married today? Why hasn't the groom shown up yet?" I was standing at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, and quite a few people were coming and going, watching and sizing us up. Da Xiong, whom I had pushed away just now, immediately pointed at me and shouted for them to hear. "Come and take a look, everyone. This woman wanted to be someone's mistress. After being exposed, she insists that she's here to get married today. Let's wait and see today where this mistress's groom is." The onlookers stopped in their tracks, pointed at me, and started gossiping. Some even took out their mobile phones to take pictures and record videos of me. The wind in early autumn was a bit chilly, and I couldn't help folding my arms and hugging myself tightly. Scarlett also rubbed her arms, and immediately Marcos took off his coat and put it on her. He shouted in dissatisfaction, "Grace, call and hurry up your dear husband. If my Scarlett catches a cold from the cold, I'll hold you responsible." I lowered my head, feeling cold from my heart to my body. Actually, I wasn't sure when my fiancé would arrive. After all, I had only met him once. As time passed, still no one showed up, but quite a few people had gathered around me. The cameras in their hands were almost shoved right into my face. I could only keep backing away, avoiding those cameras until I bumped into someone and stopped. "Sorry." Before I could finish my words, a pair of strong hands were placed on my shoulders. "I'm the one who should be sorry." "Sorry, honey. There was a traffic jam on the road, and I'm late." The voice was deep and pleasant, and it rang right behind my ears. My heart suddenly started beating rapidly, and I was even a bit afraid to turn around and look. The man behind me, as if sensing my stiff body, chuckled softly, patted my shoulder gently, and then took the initiative to take 2 steps forward, standing in front of me. "Everyone, today is a good day for me and my new wife to get married. Here are some wedding candies for you all. Everyone gets some." After he said that, his assistant immediately went to the car and fetched a big bag of wedding candies. The passers-by opened the candy bags and found that they were filled with expensive candies. Goodness! This bag of wedding candies must cost a lot. The groom looks so dignified and imposing, and the bride is so elegant and graceful. The young couple is a perfect match. The bride wasn't lying. She really came to get married. Who was it that slandered her as a mistress just now? The passers-by changed their attitude of just watching the fun and looking for trouble and turned around to find the people who had been leading the charge just now. Daxiong saw that the situation was not right and turned around and ran. Once he ran, he became the focus instead. "It's him." On this happy day for the newlyweds, he insisted that the bride was a mistress, misled us, and almost caused a misunderstanding. Everett, my fiancé-to-be, who was standing in front of me, nodded to his assistant, who understood and drove off to chase after Daxiong, who had also driven away. Someone in the crowd said, "The groom looks so familiar. It seems like I remember now. He's the president of the Everett family. He was on the cover of a financial magazine before." Hearing this, I was also surprised. Everett was the person I met on a blind date, and we had only met once. Both sides thought there was no big problem, so we vaguely agreed to get engaged. I didn't expect that he was actually a famous entrepreneur. The passers-by not only took the initiative to delete the videos they had just taken of me but also smiled and sent their blessings to us before leaving. "Happy wedding! May you be happily married for 100 years. With the matter resolved, Everett turned around and took my hand. "Let's go, honey. Let's go inside to get the marriage certificate." I numbly followed his steps and subconsciously looked back. Marcos was standing there. Besides confusion, there was also a hint of anger on his face. I didn't understand. What did he have to be angry about? When we came to the second floor of the Civil Affairs Bureau, I took out all kinds of documents. Even when the staff handed the red marriage certificates to us, I still felt dizzy. It seemed that just like this, I was really married. The person wasn't Marcos, whom I had chased after for years, but a stranger I had only met once. "Come on, bride and groom. Smile for the camera." The photographer following us took pictures of us after we got the certificates. Everett noticed that I seemed a bit out of it and said to the photographer, "Just take one picture to show my family when we go back. That's enough for today. Let's call it a day." I made an excuse to go to the bathroom, wanting to find a quiet place to calm down, but at the window of the bathroom on the second floor, I heard the conversation of Marcos and his group on the first floor. Marcos was smoking with a circle of his buddies around him. In the thick smoke, someone asked, "Grace couldn't be serious and really got married, could she?" Someone beside him immediately replied, "That guy must be an actor she hired. He looks all dressed up. With Grace's own conditions, how could she possibly find someone like that?" Marcos stubbed out his cigarette and came to a conclusion, "It must be an act." He chuckled softly. "This must be another little trick of Grace's. Over the years, what tricks hasn't she used to chase after me? Everyone around him echoed one after another, that's right. She loves Marcos so much. How could she be willing to marry someone else? I think she'd rather stay single all her life and stick to Marcos like chewing gum. Marcos's dark and gloomy expression gradually eased up. Wait until Grace comes downstairs. We'll expose her directly and see if she still dares to play tricks on us. He wiped his hands that had touched the cigarette with a wet wipe and sprayed some mouth freshener into his mouth. Quick, smell me and see if there's still any cigarette smell on me. Scarlett can't stand this smell. Don't let her be bothered by it. Marcos was hurriedly cleaning himself up, looking a bit flustered. Suddenly, I remembered that when we were in college, Marcos had just learned to smoke. He choked on the cigarette smoke himself and then stuffed the cigarette into my mouth. When he saw how embarrassed I was, coughing almost my lungs out after being choked, he clapped his hands and laughed loudly. There were so many types of cigarettes on the market, and he was particularly picky about tobacco. So he simply bought dozens of kinds of cigarettes and asked me to try smoking them one by one for him. He said, "Don't you always say that you know me very well? Then smoke all these cigarettes and pick out the one that I might like. If you pick the right one, I'll accept your confession and give it a try with you." I was overjoyed and spent the whole night trying cigarettes for him, trying my best to find the flavor that Marcos might like the most. I liked Marcos so much that I had confessed my love to him many times since we were kids, but he only said that he regarded me as a buddy. This was a hard-won opportunity for me, and I had to seize it. That night, the cigarette smoke made my eyes water and kept me coughing. The next day, I was even rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment due to excessive nicotine intake, which led to pulmonary emphysema. But when I was discharged from the hospital and excitedly took the selected cigarette to find Marcos, he said, "I want to chase Scarlett, the beauty of the School of Liberal Arts. I heard that she doesn't like men who smoke. It seems that I have to quit smoking. Grace, you have friends in the School of Liberal Arts, right? Go and help me get Scarlett's contact information for me." As Marcos said this, he put his arm around my neck and said with a grin, "We're childhood buddies. You won't refuse to do this little favor for me, will you?" I froze on the spot. Out of the corner of my eye, I could even see my fingers that had been yellowed by cigarette smoke, but in the end, I still agreed to his request with a bitter smile. They were right. I really couldn't leave Marcos in the past. I had thought that if I couldn't marry Marcos, then I would wait until he got married and had children and then just find someone to marry randomly. But now, I'm really tired and exhausted. I don't want to wait anymore. I'm going to get married first. Before going downstairs and walking out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Everett carefully arranged my wedding dress for me. The originally messy veil was patiently smoothed out by him, and the edges of the gauze skirt that had been stepped on a few times were also wiped clean of the dirty parts little by him with a wet wipe. "I'm sorry. I really wanted to see you in a wedding dress, so I asked you to wear this dress to get the marriage certificate with me today. Maybe I should have ignored your refusal and just driven to your home to pick you up directly." Everett's voice was deep and pleasant, and what he said made me blush uncontrollably. Listening to his words, it seemed that we had known each other before. But I had clearly only met him once. I didn't dare to look into his eyes and lowered my head to reply, "It's okay. I insisted on taking a taxi here by myself. It's not your fault." Everett chuckled softly. He reached out his hand to me, then, "Can I hold your hand now?" I knew that Marcos and his friends who were waiting to watch the fun were downstairs at this moment. So I firmly put my hand in Everett's palm. But I was also a bit worried, afraid that there would be some embarrassing scenes later. "Everett, if you hear some unpleasant words later, don't take them seriously and don't mind them." Everett squeezed my hand and asked with a smile, "You're still calling me by my name? That's so distant. Be good and call me hubby." Instantly, my face turned bright red. My mouth moved, and I called out softly, "Hubby." Everett touched my head, leaned closer to me, and replied softly, "Honey, let's go. No matter what voices there are, I won't care." When the two of us walked out of the gate of the Civil Affairs Bureau hand in hand, Some passersby even thought we were wedding dress models and took a few pictures of us. Amid the praises of what a perfect couple we were, I saw Marcos not far away. The expression on his face seemed to be frozen, and the smile on the corner of his mouth gradually disappeared. I didn't want to provoke him anymore, so I pulled Everett's hand and wanted to take a detour, but Marcos took the initiative to come forward and blocked our way. He waved at me, just like calling a little dog he raised at home. "Grace, have you had enough fun? Come here. I'll take you to celebrate your birthday." So he did know that today was my birthday, but he still chose to play tricks on me at this important time. Before I could refuse, Everett beside me spoke first. "You're my wife's friend, right? Thank you for your kindness, but I've already prepared a birthday banquet for her. She probably can't go with you. However, if you want to celebrate her birthday, you're welcome to bring gifts and come to the banquet. It's in hall number 1 of the Wanley Hotel." I immediately became nervous, afraid that Everett had boasted too much and it would be embarrassing if he was exposed. Marcos saw through my tense expression at a glance. He let out a breath and he seemed much more relaxed. "Grace, the actor you hired is quite dedicated and acts really well. But you're not good at acting. You showed your true colors so easily. Come on, stop pretending. I know that you've been in love with me for so many years but couldn't get me. You couldn't bear to marry another man." The expression on Everett's face beside me changed slightly, from the aloof and polite look just now to a serious and solemn one. "I thought you were Grace's friend, but now it seems that you don't deserve to be her friend at all. We're a legally married couple who just got the marriage certificate. If you slander our relationship again, I'll hire a lawyer to sue you." Everett showed the red marriage certificate, but Marcos just crossed his arms in front of his chest and rolled his eyes disdainfully. "You really went all out with this act and even prepared fake certificates. Fine, if you want me to believe it, we'll just go and see if it's true or not. Hall number 1 of the Wanley Hotel, right? I'll take my buddies to have a look right now." Marcos turned around and waved his arm vigorously. "Brothers, Grace's new husband has reserved the whole venue of the Wanley Hotel to celebrate her birthday. Let's also go and show our support." Those people immediately responded, "Sure, let's go. Let's go to cheer for the bride and see the luxurious hotel." A large group of people got into their cars and rushed straight to the Wanley Hotel. I was extremely nervous. Oh no. I'm going to be laughed at by them for a long time again. Everett patted my head and said disapprovingly, "What are you thinking? Little birthday girl. I didn't tell a single lie just now." I followed Everett to the Wanley Hotel with fear and trepidation. He opened the car door for me and made a gesture inviting me to get out. Marcos and his friends had arrived first and were standing in front looking at me with great interest. Scarlett beside him even sighed and shook her head at me, as if she was very disappointed in me. Everyone was waiting to see my joke. I hesitated to get out of the car for a long time, afraid to face what was about to happen. Everett stared into my eyes and comforted me, saying, "Don't be afraid, Grace. I'm really here to take you to celebrate your birthday." Should I believe him? Once, Marcos also promised me that he would give me the grandest birthday gift for my 20th birthday. But when I arrived at the scene, he directly turned around and gave the flowers in his hand to Scarlett beside him. It was supposed to be my birthday party, but he forcibly turned it into a grand confession to Scarlett. "Scarlett, would you like to be my girlfriend?" The handsome and affectionate Marcos, the extremely surprised heroine, and the friends applauding and cheering beside them. Only I, who had dressed up carefully but ended up disappointed, was like an ugly duckling standing aside. Since that day, my birthday has become their anniversary of falling in love. My friends who were there also laughed at me. "Did you really think these flowers and balloons were prepared for you? These are all gifts that Marcos prepared for Sister Scarlett." Using your birthday as an excuse to call Sister Scarlett out, that's Marcos's real purpose. You're just a stepping stone on their path of falling in love. Why is it like this? Clearly, on my 15th birthday, because of a casual word from me, Marcos would catch a whole box of fireflies. In the twinkling light of the stars and fireflies, he gently wished me a happy birthday. He said that he hoped I would be the happiest little girl in the world and have all the enviable beauties in this world. He also gave me a whole set of pure white dresses as a gift on my 18th birthday with a bit of shyness. He said that he bought them casually, but in fact he worked in a hot pot restaurant for 2 months during the summer vacation, washing dishes until his hands peeled and running errands until his feet blistered to buy that dress. He said that I would look like a princess in this dress, and I made a wish in my heart that he would be the prince who would hold my hand for a lifetime. When exactly did everything start to change? Probably when he met Scarlett in college. I don't resent Scarlett. I just feel sorry for the relationship that Marcos and I had since we were children. With these thoughts in mind, I let go of the knot in my heart and finally found the new courage to face my new life. I got out of the car, took Everett's arm, and smiled as I stared into his eyes. Well, then, let me properly celebrate my 30th birthday. The car happened to stop at the end of the red carpet. Everett and I stepped onto the red carpet prepared by the hotel together. When the staff on both sides saw us coming, they pulled the confetti launchers in their hands, and with a few popping sounds, ribbons and sequins fell from the sky. They shouted in unison, "Happy birthday, Miss Grace. Happy wedding." I didn't deliberately turn around to look at Marcos's face, but I could roughly guess his expression. The door of hall number 1 opened, and the spotlight shone on Everett and me just right. I saw that not only my friends but even my parents were sitting in the guest seats. They smiled and sent their blessings to us. "Grace, Everett, wish you a happy wedding and happy birthday to our dear Grace." Just when we were in a harmonious atmosphere, Marcos's incredulous voice suddenly came from behind. "Uncle, Auntie, why are you here?" When my mother saw Marcos, the smile on her face immediately disappeared. She used to be very optimistic about the two of us, but she had seen everything that had happened between Marcos and me over the years. She said in an annoyed tone, "It's the boy from the Marcos family. Are you also here to attend our Grace's birthday banquet and wedding banquet? You know, it's really not right of you. You came to the banquet without even bringing a gift. After all, you've been friends with Grace for so many years. Coming empty-handed like this, aren't you afraid of being laughed at by others?" Marcos was completely stunned on the spot. He looked around in disbelief and found that our mutual friends were also sitting in the guest seats. Even our names, Everett's and mine, were written on the big screen. The group of friends who came with him, as well as Scarlett, were also shocked. Marcos suddenly turned his head to look at me. He grabbed my shoulders, his eyes full of shock and grief. "So, you're really married?" And I just looked at him expressionlessly. "Marcos, I'm not like you. I never tell lies. Every word I said to you today is true. The wedding dress was bought by my husband. The wedding invitations were designed by us together. The marriage certificate is real, and the banquet hall was reserved long ago. As for that moments I posted about trying on and buying the wedding dress, I couldn't help chuckling softly. It wasn't meant for you to see at all." Marcos's pupils dilated in shock, as if he had heard something earth-shattering. Everett knocked his hand off my shoulder, dissatisfied. "If you have something to say, don't lay your hands on my wife." Scarlett also came up to pull him. "Marcos, let's go." Marcos's eyes were bloodshot. Uncharacteristically, he shook off Scarlett's hand. "Leave me alone." This was the first time he had yelled at Scarlett. Scarlett's eyes immediately turned red, and she looked so aggrieved that she was about to cry in the next second. I kindly reminded him, "Your girlfriend is about to cry." But Marcos tightly grasped my hand. His brows furrowed together, and there was a bit more pleading in his eyes. This was the first time he had yelled at Scarlett. Scarlett's eyes immediately turned red, and she looked so aggrieved that she was, "Okay, Grace, I'll agree to be with you right now." He pointed at Scarlett, who was already in tears behind him. "I'll break up with her right now." Scarlett let out a desperate question. "Marcos, are you crazy?" "I'm not crazy." There were also tears in Marcos's eyes. He pleaded with me affectionately and sadly, "Grace, don't break my heart like this, don't play such jokes on me. It's not fun, and it's not funny at all." And I just calmly pulled my hand back from his. Who on earth broke whose heart? I confessed my love to you so many times and was laughed at by you and these people so many times. Now you ask me not to break your heart, but when my heart was trampled in the mud by you and when I begged you not to do this, what did you say?" A hint of confusion flashed in Marcos's eyes. It seemed that he had forgotten a bit, and I smiled and reminded him, "You didn't say anything. You just kept laughing." In an instant, Marcos remembered those past events, and his pupils shrank as if pricked by needles. "Marcos, I'm also a human being. My heart is made of flesh. I'm really tired." I took out 1 yuan from my pocket and put it back into his hand. "Thank you for your birthday gift. I'm already married. Here's the 1 yuan left after paying the 9 yuan marriage certificate fee. I'm giving it back to you." Marcos was completely crushed. His knees went weak, and he even knelt down in front of me. "Grace, don't treat me like this. Don't marry someone else. You can't marry someone else." He was like a helpless child, crying pitifully and looking so wretched. Scarlett couldn't bear it and had already run away. But Marcos didn't show any intention of chasing after her. He still clung to me and pestered me. Everett couldn't stand it anymore and gave him a hard push. "Stop acting here. Today is my wife's big day. If you keep making trouble, I'll call the security guards." Marcos staggered from Everett's push. He fell to the ground but still insisted on crawling towards me. "Grace, I'm wrong. I'm really wrong. I apologize to you. I beg you to forgive me, but please don't marry someone else." I looked down at him indifferently. "Marcos, haven't you bullied me enough? You still have to make such a big fuss at my birthday banquet. What on earth do I owe you that you have to take revenge on me like this?" Marcos crawled on his knees for a couple of steps and tightly hugged my thigh. "You don't owe me anything. It's me. I'm the despicable one. Actually, I don't like Scarlett at all. I was with her just to make you angry. Forgive me, Grace. After starting college, you were so dazzling. I was so scared that you would abandon me, that there would be no place for me in your world anymore. So I did so many stupid things. I made bets with them time and time again, just to prove to others that you love me. No one can compare to the love you have for me." Marcos looked at me with his teary and red eyes. He was so eager for my response. But I just looked into his eyes and said to him seriously, "But I don't love you anymore." To prove my words, I pushed him away and stood back beside Everett again. I took his arm and pressed close to him. "Do I need to remind you one more time? I'm already married. As you can see, we're very affectionate. Marcos, I used to love you very much, but now you're not even a stranger to me." Everett touched my head. He knew that although I looked cold and strong on the surface, my arms were actually shaking slightly. "Honey, why are you still talking to him? Just ask the security guards to escort him out." Marcos slowly got up from the ground. The music in the banquet hall had stopped long ago, and all the guests' eyes were focused on the three of us. He hung his head low, his body swaying as if he had lost his spiritual support. The security guards gathered around to pull him away. Marcos, like a trapped beast, roared, "Don't touch me." He raised his head and stared at me, his eyes red at the bottom. "Grace, I'm sorry. But I'll wait until the day you forgive me." After the farce on my birthday that day, I thought Everett would be very angry with me and might even divorce me. After all, anyone with eyes could see that Marcos and I had a deep bond, but to my surprise, he was still as nice to me as when we first met. His parents were also at the birthday banquet, and they had some complaints about Marcos. It was he who took the initiative to coax his parents. I couldn't help asking him, "Why are you so nice to me?" Everett flicked my forehead. "Fool, don't you recognize me yet?" He made a circular gesture beside his eyes, imitating a pair of glasses frames. I looked at him blankly. After thinking for a long time, I suddenly remembered. "Ah, it's you." Only then did Everett nod with satisfaction. "Yes, it's me." I couldn't help laughing. My destined fate was actually with him, just as Marcos said. When I first entered college, because of my good grades and nice personality, I was a star on campus. At that time, there was a junior with thick glasses who always quietly followed behind me, following in my footsteps. But I was so focused on Marcos at that time that I didn't notice anyone else at all. After we laughed when our eyes met, Everett took my hand. Senior, is it still too late to confess my love to you now? I thought for a moment. I guess it's still not too late. After I got married, the first ones to come and apologize to me were Marcos's cronies, led by Daxiong. They came to my door to formally apologize to me. I saw that Daxiong had a bruised face and his arm was in a bandage. I could probably guess the reason. Everett said, "Actually, you also have the right not to forgive them. When I first entered college, I was so glorious. But later, I gradually lost myself in countless jokes and bets made by Marcos and them. Before they left, they told me that Marcos and Scarlett had broken up. The process of the breakup was extremely ugly. Scarlett even scratched Marcos's face with a knife. In the past, when I heard such news, I would definitely be nervous and couldn't help but secretly go to visit him, but now, I just said, oh, indifferently. Marcos was unwilling to accept it and still wanted to come to find me. I shut the door on him and avoided seeing him. After that, it seemed that he completely disappeared from my sight. Many years later, when I was shopping in the mall with my daughter in my arms and Everett by my side, I saw a waiter in a fast food restaurant who looked a lot like him. When I wanted to take another look to make sure, that person lowered the brim of his hat and turned his face away so that I couldn't see him. Suddenly, I understood. The young man who accompanied me when I was young and whom I regarded as a treasure had already been killed by time. The current Marcos was just an ordinary person who had been worn down by society. My daughter babbled and asked me, "Mommy, what are you looking at? Do you want to eat a hamburger too?" I shook my head. Mommy doesn't want to eat a hamburger. But Mommy used to like it. I smiled and touched her little face. People change. When you eat something you like too much, you won't like it anymore. When the person you loved isn't worth it anymore, you won't love them either. My daughter nodded as if she understood but didn't really understand. Everett walked over and took the hands of both my daughter and me. Are my big baby and little baby done shopping? If so, let's go home. My daughter happily echoed, go home. Go home. I also looked at Everett and said, let's go home, hubby.